I can tell you exactly what everyone in here is right now. Nobody ever taught me that. Pain did.
I spent years making myself invisible. Turns out I was building a superpower. I understand now. This is the truth.
Do you know that feeling of being in a crowded room, a party, a family dinner, a classroom, and sensing that if you simply vanished, no one would notice? Not because you were shy, not because something was wrong with you, but because you learned very early on that the safest way to survive was to make yourself small. You went unnoticed, and even though it hurt, you were quietly perfecting something extraordinary without realizing it. You started to see everything. While others were talking, you were watching. While others were performing, you were feeling. And that silent pain, growing up invisible, didn't break you. It turned you into something most people will never be. Developmental psychology has a name for what you live through: adaptive hypervigilance. When a child grows up in an environment where their emotions aren't validated, where they simply aren't seen, the nervous system does something remarkable. It recalibrates. It becomes a high-precision radar. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for reading social situations, started working overtime from a very young age. Not because you had a problem, because you were surviving. Think of it this way. While other kids were processing the world in standard definition, you were learning to read it in 8K with surround sound. You are not broken. Your brain simply learned to play chess in a world that was playing checkers. People who grew up feeling invisible develop what researchers call advanced emotional mapping. From childhood, you learn to read micro-expressions, tones of voice, silences, to detect when the energy in a room shifted before anyone said a single word. Now you're the adult who knows, before anyone admits it, when something is wrong. Who walks into a space and within 30 seconds understands exactly who is in conflict with whom. That's not a gift from the universe. That's the result of years of involuntary, high-stakes training in deep emotional reading. When you couldn't rely on others to see you, you learned to validate yourself. Over time, that becomes an extraordinarily stable internal compass. While many adults need constant external approval to make decisions, you built the capacity to trust your own judgment. That's not coldness. That's resilience constructed entirely from the inside out. Invisible people don't make superficial connections. They can't. They're wired to go straight to what matters. Neurologically, this is linked to a dopamine system that runs more on acetylcholine, the chemistry of reflection, deep analysis, and meaningful connection, rather than quick stimulation and social noise. That's why small talk drains you. That's why you'd rather have one real conversation than 100 empty exchanges. And when you finally do connect with someone, that connection reaches a depth most people will never experience. Here's something no one ever explains to you. That deep love you have for being alone, for your home, for your quiet corner, for your silence, is not pathological introversion. It's not a social problem. It's what neuroscientists call refuge appeal, the genuine cerebral pleasure of feeling safe while the outside world is chaotic. When you grew up invisible, external noise, unpredictable social dynamics, constant performance, environments that were supposed to be safe but never were, represented maximum cognitive load. Your nervous system was burning energy just to navigate spaces that should have been easy, so you learned to build your own. Your solitude is not escape, it's co-regulation. It's your nervous system finally stopping the performance for an audience that was never really watching anyway. This is perhaps the most powerful strength, and the least recognized. People who grew up feeling invisible develop what's called cognitive bilaterality, the capacity to inhabit multiple perspectives simultaneously. To understand the introvert and the extrovert, the one who suffers in silence and the one who screams it out loud, the person who always fit in and the one who never did. You are an emotional translator, a natural mediator, someone who can stand between two completely different realities and understand both with equal depth. In an increasingly polarized world, that is priceless. Briefly, because this matters, Research in effective neuroscience shows that people with a history of emotional invisibility in childhood frequently present heightened activity in the amygdala for social threat detection, and in compensation, greater development of the anterior cingulate cortex, the region responsible for emotional self-regulation and cognitive empathy. This isn't just unprocessed trauma, this is adaptation with extraordinary consequences. If you made it here, something in this probably resonated in a way that's hard to put into words. So I want you to hear this clearly. You did not choose to grow up invisible, but you did choose, even when no one acknowledged it, to keep going anyway. And in that process, you built strengths that most people never had to develop, because they never needed them to survive. This is not a lack of willpower. This is not being too sensitive. This is your biology, your history, and your brain working together to protect you, to give you depth, to make you exactly who you are. Growth comes from pain, but pain is never the end of the story. You spent years believing that being unseen meant being unimportant, that your quietness was a weakness, that your depth was a burden, that the way you loved solitude, read rooms, and felt everything so deeply was something to fix or apologize for. It was never any of those things. It was you, becoming. And now you carry something that can't be taught in any classroom or built in any workshop. You carry the kind of wisdom that only comes from surviving the silence, from learning to see the world clearly, precisely because no one was paying attention to you while you did it. That is not a small thing. That is everything. So before you close this video, I want you to do one thing. Not for me, for yourself. Place your hand on your chest for just a second and acknowledge, even quietly, even privately, that you made it. That the invisible kid in you did something remarkable with what they were given. You are allowed to take up space now. You always were. Tell me in the comments, which of these 5 strengths do you recognize in yourself? Which one was hardest to see as a strength and not a flaw? And if someone in your life needs to hear this today, a friend, a sibling, someone you know who has always moved through the world a little quietly, share this video with them. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is hand someone a mirror and say, "Look at what you actually are." If this resonated, subscribe, because this channel exists for exactly the people who never felt like anything was made for them. Everything here is made for you. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.